Hello folks, in this section I'm going to be talking about the percentages and absolute change, relative change, all those concepts over some examples. Um, the first example is kind of like a motivation example. It's pretty simple. So the problem is you try to express the first number as a percentage of the second number. So so it's kind of, for example, kind of saying like given two numbers, you try to compare them. Um, in this case, your first number is 28 pounds. You can include the units, and the second number is 52 pounds. So um, you divide the smaller with, I mean not smaller, but you divide the first number by the second number to get the percentage of what second number gives you the first number. So that means you're going to be writing in that way you will be writing the first number as a percentage of the second number. So kind of the question is this: 28 is what percent of 52? So that's the question. So you divide 28 by 52 because you try to find 52 in the portion of you try to find the portion of 28 in 52. So it's 28 pounds divided by 52 pounds. You can include the units, they're going to be cancelled. So if you divide them by a calculator, you will get 0.54, which means if you write it as a percentage, you move that two decimals to the right. That's 54%. So that means 54% of 52 is 28. You can check it easily. 52 times 0.54, it's going to give you 28. Then that's what you simply solve. So that's how I got that percentage. This is the first problem. Now the second problem is about absolute change and the relative change. So the number of newspapers in United States was 2,226 in 1900, and now in 2011 that's counted to be 1,382. So you try to find the absolute change and relative change. Now absolute change means the change in terms of the numbers. That's it. Like it's the plain difference. Like what's the difference between 3 and 5? It's 2. So the absolute change in this, it can be negative, it can be positive. You can just so I'll look at absolute change. Sometimes it's absolute difference for different units. So the absolute change in this case, in terms of years, you see it's decreasing, so you expect something negative that shows that decline. So it's going to be 1,382 minus 2,226. So you got this as negative 844. So this is the absolute change, the change in terms of the change in absolute terms. So it's kind of the pure difference. Now the relative change is, now you try to figure out that change, relative change. You figure out that change, but you compare it with the first number, with the actual initial value. So it's kind of it increased or decreased. If the absolute change is negative, that means it decreases. How you can find this? You look at the change. It's 1382 minus 2,226, and then you divide this. You divide this by the actual value that you compared with, which is 2,226. That's kind of that initial value. So it went down, and then I look at the change, which is, so we find that it's negative 844, but you compare that number with the initial value, the first value. So this gives us negative 0.379, which means we have negative 37.9%. So what does that mean? That means within these 2 years we have a decrease of 37.9%. You see, you compare that difference with the initial value. That's how you find the absolute change. The absolute change, relative change, both can be negative. It can be positive if there's an increase. But in this example, we see that decrease, so it's negative. Now, we'll keep this one. Let's go down to the next example. So in this one, it says the gestation period of humans, what percent? It says longer. You see, it says clearly longer because the period for human, the gestation period for humans is 266 days, whereas for the bears is 220. So this is the smaller number, so you expect it to be longer. So you're comparing 266 to 220. So if you look at now, I mean, usually if that's a difference, that's different values, you can use absolute change for the same certain value, like the number of daily newspapers. Now you're simply comparing different quantities with the same unit though. So in this case, we call it not absolute change, but we call it absolute difference. Now absolute difference in this case is the actual difference. So it's 266. So it's 266 minus 220. So it's 46 days. This is the absolute difference between two gestation periods. If you look at the relative difference, now this really depends on how the problem is set up. It says longer. That means you're comparing 266 to 220. That's what I did in the absolute difference as well. If it was like kind of shorter, then you will do vice versa. When it's negative, you don't have to keep that negative because you're already using shorter, and you're flipping it, so it's going to be 46 days shorter. But in that case, the relative difference will be different. So now be careful which number you're comparing to. Right now, 266 is compared to 220. So it's going to be 266 minus 220 divided by 220. If 220 was compared to 266, then you will flip these two and the bottom will be 266, because that means you're comparing the actual number, one of the numbers, with the like this 220 with 266. So in that case, we got 46 divided by 220, and if you look at this, it's going to be 0.209, which is 20.9% longer. So we just get that one. Now the next example, if you have something given in terms of the percentages, so in that case you see like you have percentage of a percentage. So in that case we use the term percentage points. Like that gives you a kind of like that word can show the difference between two concepts. Now in this case, if you look at the absolute change or absolute difference or absolute change, I mean, we can just say that's just on the same account, so we can just say absolute change. You have 2.8% minus 2.3%, which is 0.5%. We just call that percentage points because it's kind of like your unit is the percentage points. It's like the percentages is just your unit. So that's why you call it percentage points. But if you look at the relative change, now it's kind of, now you look at the change, it's 2.8% minus 2.3%. This is divided by 2.3%. As you see, percent is your unit now. It's going to be 0.5% divided by 2.3%. And that's going to give you 0.217, which is 21.7%. So this is the relative change. This is not percentage points now. That's the change on the rate compared to the initial value. So that's why this is relative change. So if you're only looking at the difference of two percentages, then you use the word percentage points added to it. Okay, now let's go to the next problem. So this is a typical problem. How do you find the total value? You purchase a bike and the bike costs $760, and you try to figure out the final cost. What's the tax? You try to compute that. It's really something simple. You multiply 760 by 0.076. You need to change this to the decimal. So that gives you the amount to be 57.76. So this is the tax that you need to pay, and you add 760 to this, and that's going to give you the total, which is 817.76. This is the total. But there's another way, there's another easy way. So see, I calculated the tax that I need to pay, and then I add to the actual total value, actual retail value, and that gives you the total. Now, there's another way. You can simply multiply the 760 by 1.076. So this 1 is for the retail value, 0.076, this is for the tax. This portion is for the tax. You just do one operation in here. If you multiply, you will get the answer directly to be 817.76 as the total. This is, let's say this is an alternative way. It's an alternative solution. Some students like this way, which is kind of nice. You do it at once. So we have one more problem in here. It's a really typical nice problem. We want to say if this is this is a true or false question. Is this true or false? Now, the point is this is like an abuse of one of the abuses of like it kind of like looks like one of the mistakes in percentages. Let's say not abuse, but so you have profits 4% in the first year, then it decreased by 2% in the following year. So in 2 years you have only 2%. Actually, you can just see that really easily. Since we're working with the percentages, you can use the number 100. So let's say at the beginning you have a profit of 100. Let's say dollars, $100,000, whichever you say. Let's say we take the number 100. If you increase this by 4%, if you increase this number by 4%, so it's going to be simply a plus 4, because 100 times 4%, which is 0.04, will be simply 4. So you're increasing it 4% for 100, or 4, they're the same. So you got 104. It's the first year. Now the next year, you will decrease this by 2%, but be careful. This 2% is applied to 104. So I have 104 times 0.02, which gives me 2.08. So that means I need to decrease this by 2.08 in absolute terms. This is the relative change, this is the absolute change. So in that case, you will get 101.92. So see, you have 100 at the beginning and you got 101.92 at the end. So that means this profit is 1.92%. It's not 2%. So can you see that mistake? Like here, that 2% is applied to the total. So that means you need to apply that 2% to 104, not just 100. So the actual, so this is, we can just say this statement is false. It's a false statement. The correct statement is your profits are up to by 1.92%. It's 0.08% lower. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope this video will be helpful. Bye.